All right. And Dinkar Prakash Srivastava, former Indian ambassador to Iran and distinguished fellow VIF, joins us on the broadcast. Ambassador, a very warm welcome to the broadcast. First of all, the tensions in West Asia seems to be increasing again, seems to be rising again. Now, Israel is alleging that Iran has violated the ceasefire, and this after both nations agreed for truce. How do you see this?
You know, in these kind of wars situations, ceasefires take some time to go into effect because both sides try to grab last minute advantage, trying to push the boundary. Now, in this case, that is not going to happen. These are two countries, fortunately, 1,000 kilometers apart. But there's still this issue that,
But Ambassador,
one side might feel that the other side has had an advantage, and this is the last chance to, shall I say, even the scores. So it will take some time, but let's hope that the ceasefire holds. And incidentally, the Iranian side has denied the Israeli claim that there was a strike again after the ceasefire went into effect.
But Ambassador, there was a ray of hope, a sigh of relief, and everyone was just happy around the world because it has a wider implications as well. The tensions in West Asia, everyone was happy after listening to the fact that both Iran and Israel agreed to ceasefire. But what just happened? How do you analyze the entire scenario? You just said that it takes some time for both the nations in these kind of situations to actually sink in when it comes to ceasefire. But what is this actually, what the situation says as of now?
As I mentioned, the Iranian side says that there was no strike again after no recent strike, which is a tacit admission that there was a ceasefire which was holding. They have also said there is no agreement, but they would not attack as long as the Israeli side does not attack. And it's a very difficult situation, and please bear in mind the announcement by President Trump. There is this issue of trust deficit because US itself was a belligerent. So, you can't be a party to war and be a mediator at the same time. So this probably is a reason. This background we have to keep in mind, but let's hope that the ceasefire which has been announced actually gets implemented by both sides.
Well, we can only hope for the same, but Ambassador, Iran had put condition earlier, like you've just also mentioned, that if Israel will not attack, we will not attack. That was a condition that Iran had put. But when it comes to Israel, Israel had agreed to ceasefire. Israel had agreed to the Trump's proposal of ceasefire. But now it seems like Iran has violated, and the conditions that they have put doesn't mean anything.
Agreement requires consent of both sides. So Israel agreeing to Trump's proposal does not necessarily mean that Iran has also agreed. And conversely, you can't accuse Iran of violating ceasefire simply because President Trump has announced a ceasefire and Israel says that it has agreed to it. As I said, it requires consent of both the parties.
Okay, Ambassador, is there something beyond what meets the eye?
I won't like to hazard a guess. As I said, I share your hope that the ceasefire holds, because this was an unnecessary war and it has already caused enough damage on both sides.
Indeed. But Ambassador, now looking at the present situation, how do you see Iran's nuclear program? Because they had said that we won't stop it.
Iran's nuclear program, there is no reason to assume that they are violating it. there was an agreement called JCPOA
Yes.
under Obama administration in 2016. It was not Iran which walked out of the agreement, it was US which walked out of the agreement. Iran maintained its commitment even a year after US had formally withdrawn, and this is not simply, it's certainly not my interpretation, this is what IAEA as well as the E3, the three European members said. So now, just before this recent round of hostilities, there was some hope, there was direct bilateral, there were bilateral negotiations between US and Iran, and Iran was demanding that it be allowed to maintain enrichment level up to 3.67%, which is allowed under the NPT.
Correct.
And which was also allowed under the previous agreement. And apparently this was agreed by Mr. Witkoff, the US negotiator, but next day he had to go back on what he himself had announced. And he said it has to be Trump's deal, and Trump's deal is zero enrichment. So US had again moved the goalpost. So, we cannot now blame only one side. And the side which is actually the victim of military strikes initiated by Israel.
Ambassador, now in the present situation, Israel has ordered strikes on Tehran. So do you think that we are going back to the previous situation?
I hope not. I hope not. As I said, that in these situations, skirmishes sometimes continue. It has happened in case of India-Pakistan wars. It has happened all over the world. Sinai and 67 war, 73 war in the Middle East. So let's just hope that these are episodes which will soon die out, and ceasefire will actually take effect. But let me add something.
Please.
This will not be a agreed peace. This will be an uncomfortable peace because there is no agreement between the two sides. US and Israel still maintain that it has to be zero enrichment, and Iran has not accepted that condition. On the other hand,
Ambassador, are you referring to the Libya model?
No, let me complete. On the other hand, Iran feels that it has not received any relief. The sanctions remain, so it's going to be an uncomfortable situation. I won't call it Libya model, because Libya model, what is called Libya model, was a result of regime change. Here, even if at different points this was
but Trump hinted at regime change, Ambassador.
But no, he not just hinted, he said it. And Israel was more vocal, but no regime change has taken place. So you can't say it's Libya model, and thank God it is not Libya model, because Libya model was complete anarchy in a country. Incidentally, I also, apart from serving as ambassador in Iran, I also served as ambassador in Libya, and that was during Gaddafi's days. And I have no problems in categorically stating that this was a very prosperous country. People, by and large, despite whatever you see in the Western media, they were happy. Government, picked up the bill for everything from education to health, from birth, from cradle to grave. So what happened thereafter? That's a lesson. And the lesson is that a military outcome can be quickly decided, but it is not worth it in case it destabilizes the country, and that in turn leads to unintended consequences. Now, in case of Libya, what happened? There was large-scale migration to Europe, which has caused huge problems for Europeans, and that the reaction was a series of right-wing governments which have taken power, anti-immigration movement and so on. And Iraq is a even worse case. And it was not just the Iraqis suffered, the US suffered. This was, US eventually had to leave after spending there are various figures, something like $2 trillion and taking huge casualties. And at the end of it, the Iraqi oil wells have now gone to the Chinese companies. So you don't want that kind of unintended consequences which damage all sides concerned.
All right, Ambassador, very quickly, while tensions were escalating in West Asia, India made sure that safety and security of its citizens living outside remains paramount, and thus Operation Sindhu was launched to evacuate not just Indian citizens but also citizens from countries like Nepal and Sri Lanka. How do you see that as a whole?
This was an excellent operation, very well implemented, and it was a very nice gesture on India's part to extend this also to citizens of our neighboring countries, Nepal and Sri Lanka, who may not have had the wherewithal to bring their citizens back. And incidentally, I recall, since I have served in Libya, though this happened after I had left that country, there was evacuation there, from there. And at that time, we had also allowed this facility to a lot of Bangladeshi citizens who were present in Libya. So India has provided humanitarian assistance, not only in this case, but in other cases. And I think this was a very, very nice gesture.
Indeed, the government of India makes sure that the Indians who are living abroad, their safety and security is paramount. And as far as this conflict is concerned, Ambassador, only time will tell whether the peace will prevail or the situation which is right now continues. Only the time will tell. But thank you so much for joining in on the broadcast, Ambassador.